Reading.org.
Your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, March 25th, 2026. Your readers today are
Larry Beenan
and Linda Ranella. Starting with the weather report. Cloudy today, high of 51. A passing shower or two in the evening, otherwise overcast tonight, low of 45. Cloudy tomorrow with periods of rain and a thunderstorm in the afternoon, a high of 58 and a low of 27. Rain and a thunderstorm in the afternoon, a high of 58 and a low of 27.
Investment into the arena and what the payback will be for downtown. The arena has hosted 140 events in 2024 and then 178 events this year, bringing over 1.3 million people through the building. And KeyBank Center is expected to host closer to 200 events in 2026. In initial discussions with the state, county, and city, Gwelly said the Sabres have outlined their vision for the project in the neighborhood around the area. They've also been reaching out to local property owners and developers who own parcels around the arena about the vision for downtown. In September, the Sabres extended their lease at the KeyBank Center for 5 more years, providing more of a cushion for the team to negotiate a longer-term deal. The Sabres are operating under the existing terms of their lease with Erie County for this season, and then for 4 more after, or until a new long-term agreement can be reached at an arena that is 3 decades old and has never gone through any major renovations. The county owns the arena building, while Buffalo owns the property it sits on. County officials would likely to get out of the arena business and could do so during the new lease negotiations, which may bring the state increasingly into the fold. It starts by taking care of your own business, which is happening down there with the team and the arena, and then making sure you're working closely with the public constituencies and people who are leaders in the private side to galvanize everybody about what can be done down there, Gwelly said. The power of the arena to generate buzz downtown is not going unnoticed by local leaders. Buffalo Mayor Sean Ryan said downtown sets the tone for the city, and people's impressions of downtown usually is a key factor in whether they decide to return to Buffalo. We need to continue to grow our downtown base, and you do that by bringing in big events and small events, Ryan said recently during a press conference for the NCAA tournament at KeyBank Center. A successful downtown is so much more than 9-to-5 office district, he added. It needs to be a 24/7 district. Events like this really help to increase the vibe for downtown. It's one thing for the Sabres to talk about the momentum the arena can create for downtown. It is quite another thing to see it in action. The arena's main tenant has certainly brought a buzz to downtown, especially since the new year. The Sabres went from last place to first in the Atlantic Division, have sold out 17 home games this season, including their last 11, and are close to breaking a 14-year playoff drought. Throw in the Bills and Bandits, both owned by Terry Pegula, and the success of Buffalo professional sports teams have become a huge point of leverage. The Bills, a playoff team in 8 of the last 9 seasons, received $850 million from the state and county to build a new over $2 billion stadium in Orchard Park. Upgrades to KeyBank Center, which opened in 1996 as Marine Midland Arena, could cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Pressing reservations include work in the seating bowl and concourses, as well as potentially improving the inside infrastructure and the antiquated look of the building from the outside. Architectural firm Populous, which designed the new Bills Stadium, was brought in last year to do a study that is helping form a plan for some of the next steps. The Sabres have also hired Ostroff Associates, an Albany-based lobbying firm, to advocate for state funding tied to potential renovations at KeyBank Center. Over the past 2 off-seasons, the Sabres have spent millions of dollars to replace the arena roof, put up a new video board, and install an upgraded sound system. Shortly after buying the team in 2011, Pegula paid for major renovations of the arena's locker room and training facilities. The NCAA tournament, which drew more than 51,000 fans and filled 9,000 hotel rooms, as well as the NHL draft, are expected to only boost the reputation of the Buffalo market. Gwelly also continues to be in talks with the NHL about bringing an outdoor stadium series game to the new Highmark Stadium and an NHL draft to Western New York. If we can host an event like the NHL draft, which is going to be on an international stage, it will showcase Buffalo at the highest level and lead to more, Gwelly said. In a lot of ways, it already has. We're swinging for the fences when it comes to these big events, and we know Buffalo can handle it and be a great host for it.
Thank you, Larry. Baskin cites May 14th as she seeks $10 million for grocery stores. Lawmakers and advocates from Western New York urged Governor Kathy Hochul and legislative leaders Tuesday to include $10 million in the state budget to expand the number of grocery markets offering fresh food in underserved communities. State Senator April Baskin, a Buffalo Democrat who sponsored a bill to require the funding, said the limited number of area grocery stores left the top supermarket on Jefferson Avenue vulnerable to the racist massacre that killed 10 people and wounded 3 others on May 14, 2022. The killer, Peyton Genron, then 18, of Broome County, selected the East Side Market to target the largest number of black victims. The deviant science behind thinking, where can I find the most black people possible to kill them? Oh, I know, they only have one grocery store, so that's where I'll go. There's something to be said about that, Baskin said at a news conference in the state capitol. That should never be anyone's reality, the fear of going to the one grocery store closer to them that cost them their life. Baskin's bill, known as the FRESH, F-R-E-S-H, Food Retail Establishment Subsidization for Healthy Communities Act, was included in the Senate's recent budget plan. The proposal, co-sponsored by Assemblymember Al Stirp, Democrat of Cicero, died in the Assembly in January. The bill, previously sponsored by Baskin's predecessor, now Representative Tim Kennedy, Democrat of Buffalo, passed both houses in 2024. Hochul vetoed it, citing other food programs. She said the bill would come at a substantial cost that is not accounted for in the state's financial plan. On Tuesday, Baskin and Stirp said their other programs did not mirror what their bill would do. I think that the executive level is focused on helping people buy food. We're looking at the other end, Stirp said. We want to provide access to it, and that's different. Unless you're focused on providing access, you're not putting money that's going to help these small grocery stores expand. The news conference drew Niagara Falls City Council Chair Brian Archie, Jessica Gilbert Overland, the director and co-founder of the Good Food Buffalo Coalition, and Colin Bishop, the chief communications officer for Feed More Western New York. All traveled from Western New York. Archie said the food that is available is not necessarily healthy and nutritious. He said he lives in one of the poorest zip codes in Niagara Falls, where the lack of transportation makes the 2 miles to reach to the nearest grocery store too far for many residents. Health outcomes in the area, he said, are not the best. This bill, in and of itself, is desperately needed in places like Niagara Falls and Buffalo and the rest of upstate, Archie said. It will allow an opportunity for people to live happy, healthy, and fruitful lives by making the condition that they need to live readily available. It will offer an opportunity for small businesses to have an economic uplift and be able to provide the resources that I believe they actually get into business for. He said the bill could connect the larger farming community in Niagara County to the grocery stores. Gilbert Overland said farmers need access to new and stable markets. Over the last 3 months, she said, her coalition has spoken to some 80 farmers and others in the food system at roundtables. We keep hearing the same thing. Farmers are struggling more than ever before to make ends meet, and they need New York State policy to support them, Gilbert Overland said. Baskin noted that the bill's supporters include Buffalo's Maston District Common Council member Zanetta Everhart, Niagara Council member Bridget Miles, and Senator George Borrello, Republican of Sunset Bay. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Trump's $1 billion deal to halt wind project is lauded, criticized. The Trump administration's $1 billion payout to a French energy company to walk away from U.S. offshore wind development is a novel tactic against the industry that supporters see as creative, but opponents see as foolish and extreme. The Interior Department announced late Monday that Total Energies agreed to what is essentially a refund of its leases for projects off the coasts of North Carolina and New York, and will invest the money in a liquefied natural gas export terminal in Texas and other fossil fuel projects instead. The department hailed it as an innovative agreement with the French energy giant so that the American people will no longer pay for ideological subsidies that benefited only the unreliable and costly offshore wind industry. The tactical shift comes after federal courts have thwarted President Trump's efforts to stop offshore wind through executive action. U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer, a New York Democrat, told the Associated Press on Tuesday that the payment sets a dangerous precedent and is a short-sighted misuse of taxpayer dollars. Robin Schaefer, president of the anti-offshore wind group project Our Coast, New Jersey, applauded what he called out-of-the-box thinking. Schaefer said after losing in the courts, the administration needed a way to take back leases that never should have been issued because of the harm offshore wind development causes to the marine environment. The Trump administration has been relentlessly creative in its effort to stop offshore wind development in the U.S., he said. While the Republican president has been particularly hostile to offshore wind, he has also blocked dozens of clean energy projects and canceled billions of dollars in grants to promote clean energy, which he derides as the Green New Scam. This comes at a time when the U.S. is trying to boost power supplies in an artificial intelligence race against China and keep electricity bills from rising even higher. The Iran war has also dealt a massive energy shock to the global economy by choking off most exports of crude oil and liquefied natural gas through the Strait of Hormuz. On the campaign trail, Trump vowed to end the offshore wind industry as soon as he returned to the White House. Trump said wind turbines are horrible and expensive and pose a threat to birds and other wildlife. Connecticut is getting power from Revolution Wind, an offshore wind project that estimates it will lower wholesale energy costs for the state. The National Audubon Society, which is dedicated to the conservation of birds, has said climate change is a greater threat to birds. Trump has long opposed offshore wind energy. In 2015, he lost his year-long battle to stop an offshore wind farm near Aberdeen in eastern Scotland when Britain's Supreme Court unanimously ruled against him. Trump claimed the 11 turbines would spoil the view from his golf course. He wants to boost production of oil, natural gas, and coal, which will cause climate change, because he argues that doing so would give the U.S. the lowest cost energy and electricity of any nation in the world. His first day back in office, he acted on his campaign promise, signing an executive order temporarily halting offshore wind lease sales in federal waters and pausing permitting for all wind projects. The U.S. District Judge Patty Sayers vacated Trump's executive order blocking wind energy projects on December 8th, declaring it unlawful as she sided with the state attorneys general from 17 states and Washington, D.C., who challenged the order. The administration is appealing. 2 weeks later, the administration ordered the construction stop on 5 major East Coast offshore wind projects, citing national security concerns. Developers and states sued, and federal judges allowed all 5 to resume construction, essentially concluding that the government didn't show that the national security risk was so imminent that construction must halt. Total Energies wasn't one of those. It had already paused its 2 projects soon after Trump was elected, and the company has now pledged not to develop any new offshore wind projects in the United States. CEO Patrick Pouyanné said the refunded lease fees will finance the construction of a liquefied natural gas plant in Texas and the development of its oil and gas activities, calling it a more efficient use of capital in the U.S. Kit Kennedy, who directs the Power Division of the National Resources Defense Council, said the proposed payment to Total Energies was a boondoggle that transfers nearly $1 billion from American taxpayers to a foreign corporation and the oil and gas industry. Why is the U.S. using taxpayer dollars to not develop power when we need energy? She asked, calling the Trump administration deal a scam and harmful to the U.S. economy and environment. Carl Tobias, a University of Richmond Law School professor, has been following the lawsuits, called it unorthodox. As crude oil and gasoline prices surge, Democrats in Virginia and the U.S. should be strengthening its energy independence and resilience. Virginia started receiving power on Monday from an offshore wind project targeted by Trump, giving an energy company $1 billion of taxpayer money to pack up its jobs and invest elsewhere. in the middle of an unpopular and unwise war that is spiking energy costs is beyond idiotic, said U.S. Senator Tim Kaine in a statement to AP. U.S. Representative Chaley Pingree, a Maine Democrat, questioned whether the payout is legal under appropriations law and said she would question whether Interior Secretary Doug Burgum about it at the upcoming budget hearings. Dozens of commercial leases issued by the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management would remain active for wind energy development in the U.S. Abigail Dillon, president of Earthjustice, said she wouldn't attempt to guess whether the Trump administration will pay to stop others, but clearly it will go to extreme measures. Will they do this again? Maybe, she said.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:18. Today in history, on this date, in 1894, Jacob S. Coxey began a march from Massillon, Ohio to Washington, leading an army of as many as 500 unemployed workers to demand help from the federal government following the Panic of 1893 and ensuing Depression. In 1911, 146 people, mostly young female immigrants, were killed when a fire broke out at the Triangle Shirtwaist Company garment factory in New York. The tragedy led to legal reforms for workers' rights and workplace safety. In 1931, in the so-called Scottsboro Boys case, 9 young black men were taken off a train in Alabama and accused of raping 2 white women. After years of convictions, death sentences, and imprisonment, they were eventually vindicated. In 1947, a coal dust explosion inside the Centralia Coal Company mine number 5 in Washington County, Illinois, killed 111 miners. 31 survived. In 1965, the Reverend Martin Luther King, Jr. led 25,000 people to the Alabama state capitol in Montgomery, completing a 5-day march from Selma to protest the denial of voting rights to black Americans. And in 1990, 87 people were killed when fire raced through the Happy Land Social Club in New York City. The fire was set by patron Julio Gonzalez, who had been thrown out of the club. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. The local Buffalo News editorial. No surprises here. Buffalo's finances really are that bad. Forget grandstanding and do the work. Buffalo Common Council members are shocked that a big tax hike might be coming. They should save their surprise and do the work to keep the increase as low as possible. Mayor Sean Ryan's proposal of a 25% property tax increase can be called a preview of coming attractions, with the final feature to be revealed when the first city budget is delivered April 15th. Already, as reported by the News' Gene Sundell, some Common Council members have made it clear they don't find the idea of a 25% hike attractive at all. But what did they expect? Buffalo's dire financial straits are well known. Reluctance to raise taxes even incrementally over the last 2 decades, while overestimating revenues and underestimating expenses, are a big part of the reason the city is in the shape it's in now. There are no reserves left to fill a gap Ryan places at $109 million. Council President Joel Ferroletto states the obvious when he says, "I think that a budget that has a proposed 25% tax increase is not going to be popular." It won't be. That's why he and his fellow council members will have to be both starkly realistic in assessing the city's financial position and exceptionally creative in finding ways to soften the blow. There will be an increase, but if teamwork between the executive and legislative branches can make it less punishing, that needs to happen. Ryan has already been successful, as he promised he would be, in gaining more financial support from Albany, which could be as much as $40 million or more. But that will only help fill the current fiscal year's gaps, not next year's. Council members who want to complain about Ryan's tax increase should consider that many of them were in office when the budgets that got Buffalo to where it is now were proposed and implemented. It's their job to stand up for their constituents, but Buffalo's fiscal stability is also a key responsibility, one they should have taken more to heart before. Ryan has repeatedly said he would work with members to find other ways to close the structural deficit. He has been straightforward in his public messaging as well. In a recent social media post, Ryan makes comparison with smaller cities, Rochester and Syracuse, to illustrate how Buffalo is already underserving residents in several areas, making drastic cutting in such areas as public works inadvisable, if not impossible. Unlike George H.W. Bush, Ryan didn't make read-my-lips promises. He said he'd have to raise taxes, but he also emphasized the need to borrow, and he's doing exactly what he said he would do. For borrowing, the mayor is pushing state legislation that would make it possible for the city to borrow up to $500 million through the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority. But importantly, not under the authority of a hard control board. This borrowing, called deficit bonding, would lessen the need for tax increases and help pay for essential capital improvements. The Common Council, as well as the BFSA Control Board, would have to approve each round of borrowing. All parties would try to stay below the $500 million limit. A new twist to the financial situation is Ryan's reluctance to sell city-owned parking ramps as a revenue raiser, as proposed by his immediate predecessor, Christopher Scanlon. Ryan feels this would be short-sighted, and his team sees deficit bonding as a better option. Given the way the city's shortfall seems to increase by the week, those who say, like Control Board Secretary Fred Floss, that all of the above might be necessary could be right. City lawmakers and administrators were on the jobs as Buffalo plunged further and further into financial jeopardy, should do well to put grandstanding over a possible tax increase aside. Instead, they should roll up their sleeves and help the new mayor's administration find solutions that will keep the increase as low as possible without sacrificing services and capital improvements Buffalo residents deserve.
Thank you, Larry. The editorial cartoons, the first one's by Adam Zeigler of the Buffalo News. And not to be indelicate here, but usually when we think of urine, we think of yellow color. Well, this urine is coming out gold color. And it is a dog, and it is peeing on the gravestones of POWs, John McCain and Robert Mueller, but the dog has the head of President Trump. And as he is peeing on the gravestone of Robert Mueller, he says, "It's the golden age of America." Second cartoon is by Steve Kelly, Creator Syndicate. And it's a two-panel, and it shows the Shah of Iran, or the Ayatollah, I'm sorry. And in one panel he says, "We will kill tourists and other non-combatants throughout the world with guns, drones, and conventional missiles." And the next panel says, "That's the price you pay for not trusting us with nuclear weapons." Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Everybody's column. People must stand up to bad leadership. Whenever we people of this great country gather at celebrations, we stand, place our right hand over our hearts, raise our voices, and lustily sing what is the American hymn, the Star-Spangled Banner. We sing the praises of our country, and we commemorate the British bombardment of Fort McHenry in 1814 during the War of 1812. To me, the most significant phrase in that spirited tune is "the land of the free and home of the brave." Francis Scott Key availed himself of literary license by intimating that we were all free, but that did not happen until 1865 with the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. What about the brave? Right from the earliest days at Bunker Hill, everyday Americans showed enormous grit and sacrifice in the attainment of our freedom. That tradition carried through over the centuries when thousands upon thousands of men and women went to the ramparts to guarantee our liberty, many paying the ultimate price. Where are we today? Can we look to our leaders to show us examples of courage? Is this still the home of the brave? For a long time now, we have been electing leaders who lack courage, strength, and character, true leadership, and the ethical fiber required to lead a nation of 300 million people. Once more, we must look to the people in this crisis. We sons and daughters of immigrants will be there when the call comes, and we will send the so-called leaders packing. I can only hope. This from Joseph Spina of Amherst.
Thank you, Larry. International students are a great resource. I attended college with several international students and even more in graduate school. They were, without fail, highly intelligent, some downright brilliant. The students who befriended me all loved that American society embraced and was strengthened by broad multicultural thinking. This resulted in a direct spread of democratic values abroad when they visited home, and outstanding contributions to the U.S. economy and institutions when they chose to stay and work in the U.S. On the campaign trail, President Trump promised automatic green cards may stay only for a maximum of 4 years, draining our graduate schools of brilliant talent. If offered employment, that graduate now needs an H-2S lest it be revoked. New foreign student enrollment is plummeting, down 17% last fall and declining, as the Trump administration kills the incentive for the world's smartest people to come and learn in America. Incalculable is what we lose in research, talent, academic.
Thank you, Linda. Iran war is truly unleashing chaos. Applause to the news for publishing the March 7th editorial spotlight from the Philadelphia Inquirer titled Unleash Chaos. It pointed out President Trump's unconstitutional behavior. What worries me, and hopefully others, is that we cannot believe what Trump is reporting about this war of choice, and that Trump, Pete Hegseth, and appointees are unfit and unqualified to get us out of the chaos. As the editorial concludes, an unserious president is leading the country into serious trouble. It's from Marguerite Battaglia of Buffalo.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 9:30. Some opinion columns. This one is Another Voice, and it regards literacy, and is written by Katie Pace Miles, Ph.D., who is the founder and president of the Reading Institute, and Christina Oliver is executive director. High-impact tutoring makes a big difference. New York has made real progress in prioritizing early literacy, but too many children are still struggling to learn to read. The most recent National Assessment of Educational Progress shows that only about 31% of New York's fourth graders are reading at or above proficiency. For many students, falling behind in the early grades can set the trajectory for years of academic difficulty. One of the most promising strategies for reading proficiency is high-impact tutoring, consistent small group or one-on-one instruction delivered multiple times each week by trained tutors. Research shows that high-impact tutoring can be up to 15 times more effective than traditional tutoring approaches. New York now has an opportunity to invest in this success by funding a $10 million statewide high-impact tutoring pilot program currently under consideration in Albany. We grew up in Buffalo, and today we lead the Reading Institute, a New York City-based nonprofit that helps schools and universities deliver high-impact literacy tutoring programs. The Reading Institute supports a network of over 33 universities, including 13 in New York State. Since 2023, Buffalo State University and Canisius University have partnered with the Reading Institute to train their education majors in our Reading Ready high-impact tutoring program. These tutors then deliver 20 or more sessions to students at South Buffalo Charter School and other schools. Niagara University is preparing to join this effort. Buffalo State's University tutoring partnership with South Buffalo Charter School was so successful that the school has trained its teaching staff in the Reading Ready program. In the CUNY, C-U-N-Y, Reading Fellows program, 728 college students delivered nearly 60,000 tutoring sessions to 2,793 struggling readers across 66 public schools last year. Among kindergartners considered at risk, 39% are no longer considered at risk by the end of the program. The proposed $10 million statewide high-impact tutoring pilot would allow more communities to build similar partnerships. With the right investment, high-impact tutoring can help partnerships. With the right investment, high-impact tutoring can help.
MMR. Deficient, a condition in which cells cannot fix errors that occur when DNA replicates, leading to a high rate of mutation. And it was histologically aggressive, meaning a tumor is likely to grow, invade, or spread rapidly. A tumor is likely to grow, invade, or spread rapidly. It reduces recurrence risk in MMR-deficient endometrial cancer. In a 2024 study of the use of Keytruda and chemotherapy followed a reduction in recurrence from 42% without Keytruda to 31% with 2% without. So now, on top of the stress factor facing 6 rounds of chemotherapy, she's also facing a fight with her insurance company. So it's like, regardless of good insurance, you have all this technology, you have these amazing drugs, Nielsen said. Now, the person making the call is somebody somewhere who works for the insurance company. It's not my physician, who's an expert. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. Some business and financial news. Affordable housing project near ECMC wins approval. Construction on a 304-unit affordable housing complex next to Erie County Medical Center could begin as soon as a year from now after the developers behind a plan to redevelop the former Kensington Heights public housing property on the east side won city approval Monday night. Belmont Housing Resources for Western New York and CB Emmanuel Realty plan to spend $175 million to transform the vacant 17-acre site along Fillmore Avenue, just below the Kensington Expressway, into the Glenville Heights apartment complex. The project would include 3 multi-story apartment buildings plus a 44-unit senior housing building and 36 townhomes. It would also feature a clubhouse or community building with a fitness center, meeting space, laundry, and a playground, as well as a child care center, 10,000 square feet of commercial space, and additional recreational areas. The apartments would be considered workforce housing, aimed at households and families earning no more than 50 to 60% of the area median income, while the senior units would be affordable at 40% of AMI. The carbon-neutral project would also feature an all-electric design with integrated solar power. Located at 1827 Fillmore, the development itself would consist of an L-shaped 5-story building, dubbed Glenville Commons, at the southwestern edge of the site, at the corner of Fillmore and Glenny Drive, with 132 1-, 2-, and 3-bedroom units. 2 rectangular 4-story buildings called Glenview Towers arrayed north to south and perpendicular to Glenny, and on the other side of Limestone West at the southeastern edge of the site at the corner of Glenny and Limestone East. They will include 47 units each with 1-, 2-, and 3-bedroom apartments. A 4-story senior apartment building for those ages 55 and up, located north of the 2 Glenville Towers buildings, separated by Glenview Avenue, with the community building to the west. A series of 8 townhome buildings at the northern end, including 6 4-unit buildings, 2 6-unit buildings, and 2, 3, and 4-bedroom units. The complex will include 136 one-bedroom apartments averaging about 750 square feet and renting for $800 to $1,000 per month, 96 two-bedroom units of 1,050 square feet with rents of $950 to $1,200, 63 bedroom apartments of 1,300 square feet, renting for $1,100 to $1,300, and 12 four-bedroom units of 1,450 square feet each, renting for $1,200 to $1,500. Of these, 38 one-bedroom and 6 two-bedroom units are in the senior building. The developers last week obtained variances from the Zoning Board of Appeals for transparency, floor height, and building height, as well as to allow residential units on the ground floor. They're also addressing some feedback from the Planning Board about the location of dumpsters and access for garbage pickup. But the board wasn't satisfied. No, but the board was satisfied enough to greenlight the project, which is isolated from many residential homes by the highway, hospital, and Glenny Park. Project funding includes more than 12 different sources, mostly low-income housing tax credits and other financing from New York State Homes and Community Renewal, as well as brownfield tax credits and $2 million from Empire State Development for the commercial component. The City of Buffalo is also providing $2.5 million in home funds. Officials hope to close on the financing this fall before starting brownfield cleanup and construction. The board also approved a proposal by Amherst businessman Eric Fox of ELF Enterprises to construct a 3-story addition next to and above 1-story tan brick building at 433-435 Ellicott Street, creating 5 apartments and a first floor storefront of 1,432 square feet. The 8,100 square foot building would include 4 one-level, 2-bedroom apartments and 1 2-story unit with setbacks allowed for exterior balconies. The project would also be just south of the former Toutant restaurant. Was approved last week by Buffalo Preservation Board as the property is in a historic district. Larry?
Salvatore sells Garden Place Hotel to Rudra for $8.5 million. Russell Salvatore's Grand Garden Place Hotel in Lancaster has a new owner, and it's not anyone in the family. 30 years after legendary restaurateur Russell Salvatore opened the 166-room hotel on Transit Road near his Salvatore's Italian Gardens, his son Joseph sold the hotel to Rudra Management and Rosewood Hotels, the company owned and led by hotelier Jayesh Patel. The younger Salvatore and his family sold the hotel and a business to Patel affiliate for $8.5 million, including $6.4 million for the real estate, according to Patel, a deed filed Monday with the Erie County Clerk's Office. That completed a process that had been underway for the last 18 months when Salvatore and Patel began communicating, and 8 months after Patel took over management of the hotel last July. Since then, Patel said his company has made stable improvements and now plans to invest at least another $1 million in further cosmetic improvements this year, with additional investment expected in the future. The property did need a lot of improvement, he said. All 166 rooms are in working condition, but it's tired. So capital is required to do what we committed to do. The hotel is independent and unbranded, said Patel, and there are no plans to change that. The name and decor will definitely stay the same, he said. We're planning to keep it as a boutique hotel. The hotel employs 28, all of whom are staying. We've been there for 8 months, and we haven't made much staff changes, Patel said. We're just going to wait and see how 2026 passes through. Then we'll start planning for 2027 to see the positive improvement to the property. The sale does not affect whether Salvatore family businesses, which are separately owned by father and son. Joseph Salvatore, who owns the landmark family restaurant, now called Italian Prime at Salvatore's, which is located at 6461 Transit Road, as well as the Delavan Hotel and Spa, a 60-room boutique hotel that he opened behind the restaurant in 2016. Salvatore could not be reached for comment late Monday. Meanwhile, his father owns Russell's Steaks, Chops, and more at 6675 Transit, as well as the 98-room Salvatore's Grand Hotel, both of which he opened after selling his original business to his son. Located at 6615 Transit, across from the Exit 49 ramp off the Thruway, the Garden Place Hotel opened in 1995, originally with just 49 rooms before expanding. It includes the Garden Cafe breakfast restaurant, a full-service Remington's Lounge bar, and the Courtyard indoor wedding venue. There's a story behind this hotel that was years' worth of goodwill, which we see as a way to bring that asset back to life, Patel said. We see as an opportunity that we could improve its business. The Salvatores are fine operators, but a new owner and new energy comes in, and it brings a different vision. Patel's company owns and manages over 50 hotels in Western New York, Rochester, Syracuse, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Baltimore, including the former Millennium Airport Hotel, now the M Hotel on Washington Avenue in Cheektowaga, as well as the Holiday Inn Express on Grand Island, the Niagara Crossing Hotel in Lewiston, and the Hawthorne Suites in Wyndham in Williamsville. And from Business Briefly, Americans pessimistic amid hiring drought. Americans' outlook on the job market has turned increasingly pessimistic, a surprisingly negative shift given the low unemployment rate, one that likely reflects the ongoing hiring drought. Just 28% of workers in a quarterly Gallup poll survey conducted late last year said now is a good time to find a quality job, with 72% saying it was a bad time. Those figures are a sharp reversal from just a few years ago, in mid-2022, when 70% said it was a good time. Linda?
Thank you, Larry. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Allen Mark H. Davis Michael Mickey A. Fry Keith D. Furroy Janie Grace Neva V. Gerlich Gary. Janicki Paula C. Triano. Lefave Kenneth Frederick. Ligoff Roger William. Lola Sandra A. Nabak. Salomon Gerald D. Foucault. And one international obituary, French Foreign Prime Minister Lionel Jospin, who gave France its 35-hour work week and then withdrew from politics after leading France's Socialist Party to an earth-shaking presidential election defeat against far-right firebrand Jean-Marie Le Pen, has died. He was 88. If you need further information on any of these names, please give us a call at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Royal Stars. Happy birthday for Wednesday, March 25th, 2026. You're confident, self-reliant, generous, and compassionate. You are a rock of support for others. This is a more laid-back year. Take time to rejuvenate your energy. The stars show the kind of day you'll have. 5 dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. Aries, 4 stars. Don't feel diminished by comments from a family member. Instead, take a realistic look in the mirror and ask yourself what you can do to improve your image. Because you can. Tonight, cocoon at home. Taurus, 3 stars. Resist the urge to fall into the trap of doom and gloom, the paralysis of the negative. Fortunately, Jupiter will protect you and encourage optimism in your worldview. Tonight, discussions. Gemini, 3 stars. It's ironic. Today, in one way or something is going on behind the scenes might discourage you. Woe is me. The sky is falling, and yet part of you wants to get to the bottom of something in a thorough, careful way. Tonight, check your belongings. Cancer, 4 stars. Although it might be challenging dealing with bosses, parents, teachers, and authority figures today, at the same time, an authority figure might transform your world. Tonight, you win. Leo, 3 stars. Look for ways to use your influence through the media, higher education, or the legal system to wield some creative power for good. Tonight, enjoy privacy. Virgo, 3 stars. Don't be discouraged by a friend or a group, which is possible today. Instead, go with what works because a powerful opportunity is available to you. Tonight, be friendly. Libra, 2 stars. People notice you today. Unfortunately, they might see that relations with a partner or a close friend are constrained. Tonight, you're high vis. Scorpio, 4 stars. This is a productive day for you at work. You can clean up messy situations and set things right. You might have to take back something to the basics to do so, but you'll do it. Tonight, explore. Sagittarius, 3 stars. Disputes about the cost of something might discourage you today, especially if it relates to romance, kids, socializing, or vacations. Tonight, check your finances. Capricorn, 3 stars. You might make improvements at home related to bathrooms, plumbing, or something to do with recycling, or how you handle your garage. Your garbage. Maybe you got a bad garage. I don't know. Tonight, cooperate. Aquarius, 3 stars. You'll be convincing today because you will put a lot of yourself into what you say, which makes this a powerful day for those of you in sales, marketing, teaching, or acting or writing. tonight. Get organized. And Pisces, 3 stars. Financial discussions will go your way today because you'll be persuasive. Tonight, socialize.
Thank you, Larry. Hints from Heloise. Get rid of moldy smells in handbags. Dear Heloise, I have a black leather purse which I stored in its fabric bag, but when I pulled it out this year it had a terrible moldy smell. I read that baking soda and or lemon zest would help get rid of the odor, but neither helped. Any ideas on how to get rid of the odor? They're from Mel. Dear Mel, here are 3 methods that might work. 1 is to place your empty purse outside in a shady spot and let the fresh air remove the odors. Leave it open to let the air inside. Or fill a sock with baking soda and place it on inside the purse. Then seal the purse in a larger bag or box for 24 to 48 hours. Or use activated charcoal or kitty litter. Place the charcoal sachets inside the purse, or fill a large sock with kitty litter and place it inside the handbag for about 48 hours. After finishing whichever method you select, be sure to clean the purse with a leather cleaner. This should also help to rid your purse of the mold odor by Heloise. Soft laundry. Dear Heloise, your readers who enjoy soft, fluffy towels, sheets, and clothes should be aware of something that my home economics teacher taught me. Dryer sheets and liquid softeners contain oil to cut the detergent and soften material, but the oil builds up and reduces absorbency. For those of us who live in a high heat or humidity, this isn't a good thing. A good alternative is to run your laundry through a second rinse cycle. Washing machines no longer give us this option as manufacturers want their ratings to show that they use up less water and energy. In reality, a second rinse removes excess detergent, making the material softer and maintaining its absorbency. Turn the machine's cycle button around to the rinse cycle for a second rinse and spin. Your clothes won't cause itchiness from leftover detergent, and you won't need dryer sheets or liquid softeners either. Your towels, sheets, and blouses will have maximum absorbency again. And that's from Jackie. Vacuum to the rescue. Dear Heloise, while cleaning out a purse one day, I made the mistake of shaking it out over the kitchen sink. A penny jumped out into the disposal, thus creating a retrieval problem. Visibility was almost impossible, and the disposal hole was too small for my 91-year-old arthritic knuckles, which bruised every time I tried to feel for the penny. I dragged out my old Hoover vacuum cleaner, put the stretching hose down in the hole, and powered it up. Lo and behold, it gobbled up the penny in its dust container. This saved me the cost of a plumber and a new garbage disposal. From Wanda. And boots made for walking. Dear Heloise, I have 2 pairs of winter boots with a small loop in the back to help pull them on, but I can't get my finger through the loop, so I attached key rings to the loop. It's so easy to pull the ring to get into my boots and go outside. From Tony Lee. Tony, this is a great hint. Nearly everybody I know has mentioned that they struggle with getting their winter boots on. And that's from Heloise. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. From the Digest. Powell prosecutor admits evidence lacking. The Justice Department's investigation of a $2.5 billion renovation project at the Federal Reserve didn't find any evidence of a crime, a federal prosecutor privately conceded under questioning by a skeptical judge earlier this month, according to a transcript of the sealed hearing. That admission by Assistant U.S. Attorney Andrew Masuko came during a March 3rd hearing that was closed to the public, the transcript shows. 8 days later, Chief Judge James Boasberg quashed government subpoenas issued to the Federal Reserve, dealing a severe blow to the government's investigation. In his March 11th ruling, Boasberg said the government produced essentially zero evidence to suspect Fed Chair Jerome Powell of a crime. And from the Political Notebook, Rubio to visit France in effort to sell war. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will travel to France this week to try to sell America's skeptical group of 7 allies on the strategy of the Iran war that has sent global fuel prices soaring, the State Department said Tuesday. Rubio will attend a G7 foreign ministers meeting near Versailles outside of Paris on Friday to advance key U.S. interests and discuss shared military concerns and opportunities for cooperation, the department said. Areas of focus will include the Russia-Ukraine war, the situation in the Middle East, and threats across the world to peace and stability, the department said in a statement released amid conflicting accounts over whether the U.S. and Iran are talking about a resolution to the conflict.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, March 25th on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after the short break. Your readers today are
Larry Beanon
and Linda Ranella.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Linda Ranella.
and Larry Beanon.
On to some local and regional news. Residents demand more than promises from BMHA leaders. Excuse me. Dozens of Buffalo Municipal Housing Authority residents and tenant advocates filled Common Council members to let authority leadership know about the terrible conditions they are made to live in, even as council members have been pushing for improvement in recent months. Residents and advocates told of mold, rodent feces, and broken heating systems for more than an hour during Tuesday's Community Development Committee meeting, complaints that have been made by Buffalo's public housing residents for decades. James Davis, a resident of the Commodore Perry houses, where a $253 million renovation project is underway, said his apartment has had mold for 5 of the 6 years he has lived there, despite filing work orders requesting the situation be fixed all along. It wasn't until last year when he began writing letters to the BMHA board and elected officials that maintenance workers came to paint over the mold, but it quickly returned. He was recently released from the hospital after having surgery and has had breathing issues, he added. I'm on an inhaler, which I wasn't until this moment, Davis said. The BMHA has been under scrutiny from the council in recent months, with several members pushing for accountability from the Public Housing Authority over many long-standing issues with the buildings. The Common Council hosted a public forum in January where tenants and advocates blasted the conditions in many of the housing authority's complexes. Authority leadership has long pointed to the flat or barely growing federal budget for the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development as a key obstacle to maintaining its properties. The BMHA is not alone in its struggles to keep up on maintenance at its properties. Public housing authorities across the country have billions of dollars in deferred maintenance. HUD estimates it would take at least $26 billion to make all the repairs at public housing properties across the nation. BMHA Board Chair Yvonne McRae said the authority understands the residents are upset and that the board is working to fix problems with the resources it has. We want the best for our residents, and if that means we need to hire more staff, that means we need to make some changes, that we will consider everything, McRae said. Everything will be on the table. I promise you that. I commit to that. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Jamal listing Simon Electric Properties for sale for $5.9 million. In another potential indication of declining interest in Buffalo, developer Douglas Jamal has put the Simon Electric Properties up for sale, signaling a willingness to walk away from what could have been one of his signature development projects. Jamal's Douglas Development Corp. has listed the entire portfolio of 7 buildings and 3 vacant lots through J.R. Militello and Company, broker Brittany Weber, for $5.9 million, hoping to unload the full package at once. In all, that's 80,500 square feet of building space across 1.8 acres. The Mohawk Ramp, which Jamal bought from the city, is not included. However, the properties have already been consolidated into 2 individual parcels, dubbed Simon West, with 38,500 square feet on 0.4 acres, and Simon East, with 42,000 square feet on 1.4 acres, with Jamal planning to develop separately and is now willing to sell to different owners, but he will not break it up further to make individual buildings available. You can buy the whole project together, but it's pretty expensive, said James R. Militello, broker owner. Jamal is willing to sell half of it, so we can get 2 smaller developers and someone can control it. The properties were listed last Thursday, but Militello agents have been making calls to potential buyers to promote the offering, with no offers so far. The properties are located within a qualified opportunity zone, and 3 buildings are eligible for historic preservation and tax credits, including the prominent Burns Building. We're on a journey to find someone who can perhaps take a different approach to them and make it work in this tough climate right now, Militello said. Jamal could not be recalled for comment. The listing marks another step in the withdrawal by Jamal in the last couple of years after a 6-year buying spree since 2016 that made him one of the biggest real estate players in Buffalo. After buying and redeveloping the Seneca One Tower and then redeveloping the former Buffalo Police Headquarters into apartments, Jamal snapped up the Sattler and Hyatt Regency, the Mohawk Ramp, and Simon Electric Properties, and several buildings on Main Street, as well as the Genesee Gateway Building, Mahoney State Office Building, and many others. He unveiled redevelopment plans for many of them, aiming to bring hundreds of new apartments and retail space to downtown Buffalo while adding or renovating hotel rooms. His goal was to bring much higher density to downtown Buffalo and rejuvenate the city's core with new residents, new shopping and restaurants, and new activity. Jamal acquired the Simon Electric Properties in October 2021 for $5 million. He had planned a $155 million project to convert the buildings into 450 to 600 apartments while repairing the ramp and adding 2 more parking levels for a total of 900 spaces. The ramp repairs are complete. But then the post-COVID economic climate turned sour for developers as interest rates doubled, costs for materials and labor soared, and banks became stingy in their lending. That made it much harder not only for Jamal, but for all developers, especially since rental rates in Buffalo are much lower than in many other cities. Add to that the Trump administration's efforts to downsize the federal government by laying off thousands of workers and cutting agency leases in Washington, Jamal's home base, and the developer was being squeezed for cash, forcing him to shelve most of his projects locally, even as activity picked up again in Washington. He has already sold Boulevard Mall, the former Buffalo News buildings, and the Curtis Malt building on Niagara Street, with others still for sale. And he's not the only one. Iskello Development Corp., which bought the adjacent Old Editions bookshop to convert it to the bookstore lofts, also put that project up for sale. Other developers have also paused most of their projects. Nevertheless, Militello said he doesn't think Jamal is done in with Buffalo. Jamal is still very substantive. He's still very strong. He's a major player here and elsewhere, and he's not in trouble, Militello said. He may still develop these properties, but I think his interest is elsewhere, and he's more or less saying if you can find someone who will do right by the city and develop these properties, I'm all in. Militello acknowledged that the site is very complicated, but also noted that the portfolio includes some pretty cool buildings as well as a lot of open land for new construction and parking and some unique assets for conversion to residential lofts. For the right buyer, this doesn't exist anywhere else, Weber said. That's kind of the dynamic that exists here right now. Where else in the heart of Buffalo can you get an acre and a half of land?
Thank you, Larry. Ex-treasurer admits stealing thousands from Canal Fest. The former treasurer of Canal Fest of the town of Wandus has admitted to stealing nearly $27,000 from a nonprofit organization, according to the Niagara County District Attorney's Office. Carrie M. Hain, 45, of Sanborn, pleaded guilty to fourth-degree grand larceny, a Class C felony, on Monday in front of State Supreme Court Justice Mario Jacobe. As part of the plea deal, Hain accepted she paid $9,000 to the nonprofit in upfront restitution and has agreed to pay another $17,881 for a total of $26,881 in full restitution. Assistant District Attorney Susan Bornholm told the Buffalo News on Tuesday. The Niagara Gazette was first to report Hain's guilty plea. She is represented by the Niagara County's Conflict Office, whose lawyers handle cases in which the County Public Defender's Office has a conflict of interest. Hain's attorney, Michael O'Keefe, did not respond to a message seeking comment. Hain initially was charged in September with a third-degree grand larceny by North Tonawanda Police. The News reported last month a festival representative, whose name is redacted in a police report provided in response to the public records request, told City Police on September 2nd that organization leaders had recently discovered money missing from the nonprofit's KeyBank account. The organization determined $17,750 had been stolen through unauthorized ATM withdrawals between December 2023 and August of last year, according to the police report. The official said he confronted Hain, who has access to the Canal Fest account, and she admitted making the unapproved withdrawals, North Tonawanda Police reported. Hain later gave a sworn statement to detectives admitting to taking $11,250 from the Canal Fest bank account, according to records obtained by the News. The police report didn't say what Hains used the stolen money for, and it wasn't immediately clear why the amount she has agreed to pay is so much higher than the initial theft of which she was charged. North Tonawanda Police had said they were working with prosecutors to pin down the total amount of Hain's theft. Hain faces up to 1 1/3 to 4 years in prison when she is sentenced May 21st, but she could also receive a conditional discharge or sentence of probation. She was removed as Canal Fest treasurer sometime after the thefts were discovered. Peter Chenier Jr. now holds the role. Canal Fest is an 8-day summertime festival that for decades has been hosted along both sides of the canal in the cities of Tonawanda and North Tonawanda. This July, for the first time, the festival is moving to Gratwick Riverside Park in North Tonawanda after Canal Fest organizers couldn't reach agreement with Tonawanda officials on reimbursing the city for its public safety expenses. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Former local TV news staffers fear impact of merger. They are the lucky ones. They enjoyed working in television news and left the business before the $6.2 billion Nexstar-Tegna merger that is going to rock the industry in unimaginable ways. Local staff members remaining in the industry can't talk on the record about the merger approved last week by the Federal Communications Commission without a vote of commissioners a few hours after attorneys general in 7 states sued to block it on antitrust grounds. But people who have retired or left the business for careers outside of news can address their views of the merger that will allow Nexstar Media Group to reach 80% of television households and own local rivals WIVB-TV, Channel 4, owned by Nexstar, and WGRZ-TV, Channel 2, owned by Tegna. The maneuvering hasn't ended. Nexstar, which wanted the merger to compete with major national media companies in the Internet age, announced this week it will operate Tegna as a subsidiary business for now, reportedly to give it flexibility if it looks like the lawsuits will be successful. The people who left the business, at the very least, seem to understand the sentiments of the National Association of Broadcast Employees and Technicians, Communication Workers of America, NABET-CWA, and the News Guild-CWA, which condemned the FCC's decision to approve Nexstar's acquisition of Tegna in a joint statement. With its decision to greenlight Nexstar Media Group's $6 billion acquisition of Tegna, Brendan Carr's FCC has aligned itself with the billionaires against the Constitution's guarantee of a free press, they wrote. The so-called guardrails granting Nexstar a 2-year waiver of divestiture requirements are wide enough to drive a truck through. Long-standing ownership limits have been crucial to protecting free and competitive media market, yet the FCC has waived and worked around these fair laws on behalf of a company that aided the administration in censorship with Jimmy Kimmel just a few short months ago. In a current climate in which FCC Chairman Carr uses the power of his office to coerce and censor media coverage of the Iran war or political criticism, the approval of the Nexstar-Tegna merger can only be seen as an attack on our democracy and the freedom of the press. The former local TV personnel also don't mince words. I don't think it's good for anyone, whether they work in news, watch the news, or simply care about the freedom of the press, said former Channel 2 anchor Kate Welshoffer, who will become a full-time lecturer in the journalism school at St. Bonaventure University next fall. Erica Brecker, who had good experiences working in news at both Channel 2 and Channel 4, wrote, "But I cannot in good conscience say that having a single company-owned duopoly in Buffalo is good for local news jobs or viewers. Ultimately, I'm lucky that I never lost a job because of the conglomerate mergers. But I'm sad that I know people who have lost their livelihoods to this business model." Former WKBW-TV Channel 7 anchor Keith Bradford called it a sad sign of the times. Too many platforms now, not enough ad dollars to go around, especially in a small market like Buffalo. The internet and technology have completely changed the game. And they say everything changes, not always for the better. I was so fortunate to be in the business for most of its glory days. Andy DeSantis, the award-winning Channel 2 chief of photography, who retired 5 years ago, wrote, "I don't think there's an upside to this merger except for Nexstar." He noted that the skilled photographers and reporters have been replaced by multimedia journalists who shoot, report, edit, and can do their own live shots. "Very few make a living wage, and that will get worse with the merger," wrote DeSantis. "There's very little storytelling these days, and the overall quality will suffer. Fewer employees and shared responsibilities between stations mean layoffs and low pay." DeSantis adds the viewers will see an inferior product and the stations will air the same stories in a merger. So there's no competition. That also relates to less quality, more on-air mistakes, and a low story count. I'm glad I don't have to deal with it. According to sources, the words most often heard in local newsrooms about those who will have to deal with the merger but can't be quoted are anxiety, fear of the unknown, and outrage that they and the public have had little to say about a move Nexstar lobbied Carr and the Trump administration to approve. No one really knows what is going to happen. However, the fear, as represented by those who have left the industry, is that broadcasting in Western New York will be negatively impacted by loss of competition, loss of jobs, and lower salaries. There is the real possibility that Buffalo will be one of the Nexstar markets most affected because it is one of the markets where it will own the top 2 stations. There is speculation that the staff of Channel 2 and Channel 4 may be combined in one building. One general manager may run both stations, and there most likely will be job losses of duplicate services. Advertisers are fearful that rates will increase with less competition to keep them lower. Consumers should fear that higher retransmission fees to carry the local broadcast stations will be passed down to them via increase in their cable and satellite bills. The First Amendment advocates fear that Nexstar, which announced late-night host Kimball on 30 of its ABC affiliates after Carr criticized his comments about the death of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, will bow more to President Trump once it owns 264 stations covering 80% of the country. There already is plenty for First Amendment advocates to fear. The Trump administration's attack on the First Amendment have included Carr's threat of pulling licenses of those who report unfavorably about the Iran war. The FCC approved merger between Paramount and Skydance after it made some conservative and Trump-friendly moves. The Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's presidential policy that required reporters to sign a pledge that a federal judge ruled last week violated the Constitution. The hope of those against the merger is that the lawsuits will delay it significantly. To stop the merger, and the delay might have to go past the 2028 presidential elections and a change in which party runs the country and who heads the FCC. And that is as likely to happen as wages, competition, and quality will increase because of the merger.
Thank you, Larry. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 10:18. On to sports. Massive bison at stadium will light up and billow smoke. Trio to be installed this summer as centerpiece of Family Circle. The American bison that are coming to the main entrance of the Buffalo Bills' new stadium won't just be bronze cast statues. The family of 3 bisons will be stainless steel and can be illuminated in different colors and scenes. They can even have smoke billowing out of their nostrils. They'll also incorporate the Bills brand with a charge built into each of their sides. The bison will be of varying sizes, but all will be massive, starting with a 9-foot-tall calf set in between a 19-foot-high cow and a bull that will be 24 feet tall and weigh 23,000 pounds, the Bills said on Tuesday. The 4-year process from idea, conception to execution is now coming to life in a Lancaster, Pennsylvania fabrication warehouse where the bison are being built and readied for transport to Orchard Park. The bison will be installed on the base as a centerpiece to Family Circle at the front door of the over $2 billion stadium in mid-June. It will be one of the final pieces of the overall construction process at the stadium, which is scheduled for completion this summer. They've been a major conversation piece for fans since they were included in one of the new stadium's first renderings that came out in 2023. This building is kind of the future. It's not for the last 50 years, it's for the next 50 years. And this piece of art, in our opinion, is the same. It's the vision of what the future is, said Frank Cravota, Senior Vice President for Stadium Design. Maybe the conservative thing would be to have built this bronze statue, but if we didn't build the equivalent of a bronze statue for our stadium, why would we do it out there? The bison should feel like they're cut from the same cloth. The bison are just one element of how the stadium focuses on and elevates the Bills brand and tells the story of the team and the identity of the city while creating that wow factor for fans. They'll be located at the stadium's North Park entrance, which will essentially serve as a park and as attraction. It's also a historical landmark for the Bills, telling the story of the team and the history of the Western New York area where they've played since 1960. It will also include the team's Ring of Honor, which was formerly the Wall of Fame inside the bowl. The plaza will be open year-round as one of a number of gathering spaces outside the perimeter of the ticketed areas of the stadium. The plan to bring the massive bison to the stadium's promenade originated in 2022 as part of trying to create a welcoming area and gathering point where most fans will gather from the building from the corner of Southwestern Boulevard and Abbott Road. The first renderings of the stadium came out the next year and included 3 large bison of varying sizes in the middle of Family Circle, which is actually larger in width than the football field bowl. Blessing Hancock, a sculpture artist who does large-scale illuminated pieces, was chosen out of what started as 144 people or groups that responded to a request for qualifications that went out in 2024. That group was whittled down to 20 and then to 7 finalists. The Bills aim to push the envelope a bit, but not too far, and Hancock has delivered. Hancock, who lives in Hawaii and owns Skyrim Studio, is an abstract artist who does all sorts of massive illuminated pieces of art all over the world, Cravata said. What they saw what she could do, that's when a light bulb went on about the potential for the bison. They needed to look anatomically correct, but she opened their eyes to them being illuminated and incorporating a charge. The use of light was really cool, and she was the only one who we thought incorporated the brand really well into the concept. The art is a vision for the future, but not so much so that it is off-putting. The bison will feature 5 different lighting systems to help bring them to life. The charge, eyes, and nostrils also illuminate. They can be lit in bills red and blue and many other colors that can be useful to celebrate other local teams, events, and holidays. The smoke will come out of the bison nostrils thanks to an internal carbon dioxide system. Cravata said the team always wanted to have a grouping of bison to signify family, and it was necessary that they stood out. Not including the base they'll stand on, the bull will be 24 feet tall, 29 feet long, and be situated in the foreground. The cow will be 19 feet tall and 23 feet in length, and the calf is to be 9 feet tall and 13 feet in length. And the bisons will have personality, with the calf looking soft with drooping ears, and the bull with one leg up and ready to charge. In comparison, an adult giraffe, the tallest living mammal in the world, ranges from 14 to 19 feet tall. An adult American bison, measured at the hump, is around 6 feet tall and is the largest land mammal in North America. The bison will have a steel substructure with stainless steel skin created out of bent metal panels. Art Research and Enterprises, a Pennsylvania firm that Hancock has used before, is fabricating the bison. They'll be built in pieces because of their massive size. The structures will need to be engineered to be put into the ground, weight-loaded, and positioned to stand up to the wind. The calf will go in first, followed by the bull, and then the cow. They'll also be securely fenced in to protect them from people trying to climb up on the structures. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. That's no bull. Turning to hockey, playoff chase spurs Sabres toward 50 wins, and that starts tonight with the Sabres versus the Bruins face-off at 7:30 p.m. at KeyBank Center, TV on TNT, truTV, HBO Max, or radio 5:50 a.m. Now, the goal is to make the postseason, but the team would like a nifty 50. Lindy Ruff's overriding goal as coach of the Buffalo Sabres isn't to win 50 games. It's to secure a spot in the Stanley Cup playoffs somewhere in their final 11 regular season games. Making the playoffs for the first time since 2011 is now a matter of when rather than if for the Sabres, and it comes with a very real possibility of winning 50 regular season games. It becomes a hand-in-hand pursuit for the Sabres, who began Tuesday atop the Atlantic Division with 95 points. The Sabres are 44-20-7, ahead of a 7:50 p.m. game Wednesday at KeyBank Center against the Bruins. Prior to Tuesday's games, the Sabres' magic number for clinching a playoff spot was 13. It's just a testament to how consistent we've been in the last little while here. Forward Sam Carrick said, "Obviously you don't start the season with a goal to get 50 wins. Your goal is to make the playoffs and then win the playoffs. Getting 50 wins is part of that." Ruff takes a pragmatic approach in discussing what goes into the makeup of a team that can win 50 games in a season. "Believing in how you're playing," said Ruff, whose team opened the season 11-14-4, but is 33-6-3 since a 4-3 overtime win December 9th in Edmonton. "Believing. Get to that next game and deal with it and try to move on. Not easy by any means to get to that point. You've got to put in some good stretches. The incredible part is we've dug ourselves a little bit of a hole, but to get where we're at, we could get to that. For me, it's not about 50 games. For me, it's secure a playoff spot, whatever that is. Will they or won't they?" The Sabres are one of 6 NHL teams with at least 40 wins as of Tuesday morning, joining Colorado, 46 wins in 69 games, Carolina, 45 wins in 70 games, and Dallas, 43 wins in 70 games. Tampa Bay, 43 wins in 69 games, and Minnesota, 40 wins in 71 games. The 50-win mark is within reach for all 6 teams. The Sabres' ability to bring their best effort every night and to win games creatively is what stood out to Carrick, who joined the team in a March 6th trade with the New York Rangers. It's a hard league to do that in, especially when you get on a roll. Teams are always gunning for you. When you're coming up against a good team, other teams are going to bring their best game. It's a testament to us how we've been able to persevere and win every type of game. Whether it's 1-0 or 8-7, we found ways to win, different types of ways, and that's truly important. Now, will the Sabres be able to reach 50 wins in their final 11 games? MoneyPuck.com, a hockey prediction site, uses a model based solely on analytics that predicts a home team's chance of winning a game. As of Tuesday morning, MoneyPuck projected the Sabres to win at least 9 of their final 11 games, which would put them at 53 regular season wins. That prediction, though, is fluid. The probability of the Sabres winning certain games changed over the course of a day, both by fractions of a percentage point and a full percentage point. A projected loss April 4th at Washington became a 50-50 split. A projected loss in the regular season finale April 15th against Dallas swung to a projected win. MoneyPuck on Monday gave the Sabres a 48.1% chance of winning, but gave the Sabres on Tuesday a 51.8% chance of winning. MoneyPuck's models as of Tuesday have the Sabres going 4-1 in their next 5 games, ahead of games April 4th at Washington and April 6th against Tampa Bay. If the analytics dictate it, the Sabres could reach that 50-win threshold somewhere between April 4th and 9th, nearing history. Ruff's earlier diplomacy on the topic is expected, but the coach of the Sabres has experience with teams that have reached the 50-mark win.
Thank you, Larry. How will Bills use first-round draft pick? This is a report by Lance Lazowski, a news sports reporter. After signing as many as 3 starters, not including center Connor McGovern, and trading for receiver DJ Moore, the Buffalo Bills still own the 26th pick in the NFL draft. Which position will General Manager and President of Football Operations Brandon Beane prioritize? There are several factors to consider when debating which direction the Bills should go in the first round. First, the Bills traded their second-round draft pick, 60th overall, to the Chicago Bears to acquire Moore. Which positions have enough depth where Beane can wait until the 3rd or 4th round? Trading down is an option. Second, there are still a few significant holes in Buffalo's defense depth chart. Some fans are clamoring for another receiver, but would picking someone like Texas A&M's Casey Concepcion be a luxury when there are a few glaring needs on the roster? Lastly, value. Beane isn't going to reach, especially not on a non-premium position, and he'll keep his options open until it's clear who will be available when the Bills are on the clock. 1 month away from the NFL draft in Pittsburgh, let's examine the possibilities from the candidates at each position to the option to trade back and accumulate more picks. At wide receiver, let's get this one out of the way first. The Bills' depth chart at receiver include Moore, Shaquille Secure, Keon Coleman, and Joshua Palmer. Terrell Shavers is also expected to return during the second half of the 2026 season. If Beane is going to invest more at this position, then the player must be able to contribute on special teams, whether that's as a gunner, returner, or coverage player. Coleman is the wild card. The Bills don't need a receiver if they can count on a 2024 second-round draft pick to contribute significantly this season, but there's no way for them to know if he's going to be ready for the responsibility. Is a rookie going to provide even more certainty? Even if Buffalo likes a prospect enough to use pick number 26 on a receiver, the Bills would be passing up an opportunity to add a starter on day 1, contributor on defense. Could the Bills select a receiver and trade Coleman later? Sure, but the acquisition cost would need to make sense. Beane isn't giving Coleman away. At minimum, the Bills would have to add a 3rd or 4th round pick for any trade to make sense. One layer to consider: Palmer is probably only playing 1 more season in Buffalo, so the position becomes a greater need in 2027. Without trading up the Bills' most realistic options at receiver with the 26th pick, Concepcion, Washington's Denzel Boston, and Indiana's Omar Cooper Jr. Cooper's stock has risen enough that he's probably going to be off the board. Concepcion, meanwhile, has double-digit drop percentage in each of the last 2 seasons. Is he someone who can play in the bitter cold of a home playoff game? Is he a strong enough blocker? Boston is the best fit for the Bills. At 6'4", he has an efficient runner with yards after the catch ability and 20 touchdowns over the past 2 seasons. Outside linebacker, Bradley Chubb's arrival does not preclude the Bills from drafting an edge rusher with the 26th pick. Chubb had 8.5 sacks and led the Dolphins in the next-gen stats pressure rate last season, but he turns 30 in June and missed all of 2024 with a torn ACL. Michael Howick is coming off an Achilles tear. Javon Solomon has yet to show how he fits in the Bills' 3-4 defense, and Landon Jackson is likely to play a defensive end in 2026. The Bills need another talented outside linebacker, but can they wait until the 3rd, 4th, or 5th round to select someone who can contribute from day one? It would depend on who's available when the Bills are on the clock. Texas A&M's Cassius Howell, Miami's Akeem Mesidor, Clemson's T.J. Parker, and Missouri's Zion Young are possibilities. Each has potential drawbacks. Howell's arms are just 30¼ inches long. Mesidor is turning 25 next month and produced double-digit sacks just once in 6 college seasons. Parker is coming off a disappointing season. Young was exceptional in 2025, but he got charged with driving while intoxicated in December. Another option, Oklahoma's R. Mason Thomas, may be a reach at 26. Of the group, Howell is probably the best fit for the Bills. He had 33 tackles for a loan across the last 3 seasons, 1 at Bowling Green, and he had 13 passes defended in 2 years at Texas A&M. Jim Lionheart, the Bills' new defensive coordinator, has coached talented, productive players with similar arm length. Howell is an exceptional athlete who would add juice to Buffalo's front 7. Larry?
The defensive line. This is arguably the biggest need for the Bills entering the draft. Yes, they have Ed Allerter to play defensive end in Leonard's 3-4 base defense, but who are the other starters? Woods has the most upside, but does he fit Buffalo's scheme? Linebacker. The prices in free agency were too high for the Bills to justifying adding an inside linebacker, but they also eliminated a few options in the draft by trading to the 60th pick. The first round is too soon to select Texas Tech's Jacob Rodriguez or Texas Anthony Hill Jr. But what to do for the Bills if Georgia's C.J. Allen is available when they are on the clock? Trade back. There are enough needs on the roster for us to assume the Bills will gauge interest in the 26th pick to see if it makes sense to trade back and acquire an extra pick in the 3rd round. Could a team like Arizona or Cleveland want to trade back? Trading out of round 1 would cost the Bills a 5th-year option on whomever they select, but doing so would likely give them another starter on defense. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 35 minutes past the hour.
Thank you, Larry. On to Asking Eric. Aunt wants to skip wedding over political divide. Dear Eric, I am questioning my decision on whether to go to my brother's daughter's wedding. They live 2 states away and I have not seen them for several years. I love my brother, but I don't respect or agree with his political choices and views. Except now it feels more like a moral issue because of what is going on currently in our country. What is happening now is horrific, and I don't want to schmooze with people who support it. I equate it to being similar to what happened in Germany in the late 1930s. I'm pretty sure politics will not be brought up at the wedding, but just the association concerns me. At the same time, I also feel these family events are far and few between, and we are getting older, and I miss the fun we used to have together when politics was not involved. I am sad that this is dividing us. What should I do? Sad sister. Dear sister, I understand not wanting to associate with people whose actions are, in your view, causing harm. However, I think it's important to make a distinction between actions and opinions. Opinions don't exist in a vacuum, obviously. They influence actions. But being in the same room with someone with whom you disagree doesn't suggest you co-sign on their options or opinions, especially those opinions that aren't the subject of the gathering. Ask yourself what will be achieved by skipping the wedding. I present this question neutrally. You may feel that it accomplishes something for you or convinces your brother to think in a different way, but you may find that it doesn't do the most good or any good at all. You may find that there are other ways to shift this relationship. I don't know if your brother is taking actions that you find morally objectionable because that would and should impact your decision. From your letter, it sounds like the divide is ideological. Ultimately, I think the long and short of it is that your niece's wedding isn't an event that's going to ask you to make a stand or take a stand. There's obviously some rebuilding to be done in your relationship with your brother, but the wedding is probably not the right place to do it. Ask yourself what's possible here and what could be possible in the future. It sounds like it would be meaningful for you to attend. It sounds like, human to human, it might be beneficial to your family relationships to celebrate your niece. Dear Eric, my husband and I are senior citizens, late 70s, early 80s. At least twice a year we host a luncheon for my extended family. All of the food is homemade and consists of items they are known to love. We enjoy doing this, but it's a lot of work. Several times throughout the year, I will see posts on various social media websites saying something like, Mom and Dad invited all of us to dinner tonight, or Bill, one of the siblings, had everyone over for a cookout and a pool party. Not once have my husband and I been invited. I'm feeling a bit put out. I know that they are under no obligation to invite us, but I would think that since we host all of them, it would be common courtesy to invite us. Am I wrong to feel this way from Put Out in the South? Dear Put Out, your feelings make a lot of sense. Social media has a unique way of making us feel like everyone is hanging out without us sometimes. Beforehand, we might receive word about other people's gatherings or see pictures afterwards, but we weren't inundated with updates the way we are now. And because people rarely post pictures of them having a boring time at home, it's easy to get the impression that our friends and loved ones are having a blast 24/7. We know this isn't true, but it's easy to feel that way regardless. To add insult to injury, people who often host like you do sometimes find themselves left out when they aren't the ones planning. This can be innocuous. People might assume that you have a full social calendar or simply not as good as you are thinking through an invite list. One of the best ways to address this, unfortunately, is to take the reins socially, as you've done previously. You may need to be proactive about reaching out to the extended family members and letting them know you'd appreciate an invite. This can feel awkward, I admit, or presumptuous. But you're not making demands here. You're making a request, and more importantly, you're communicating how you'd like to be in a relationship with them. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. Iran is the first war of social media age. It's a black box. It's been a half century since the Vietnam War, when journalists had almost unrestricted access to the battlefield. In the years since the fall of Saigon ended that first conflict of the television age, restrictions on press freedom have grown. Now, with the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran, the first major military engagement with American involvement of the social media era, the world is facing an information black box. Internet blackouts have been imposed in Iran. In Gulf states dealing with Tehran's response, filming damage from attacks is banned. When people who defy the orders are being arrested in large orders. Earlier this month, the Telegraph reported that Sky was terminating a joint venture with the United Arab Emirates over concerns that Sky News Arabia channel was spreading propaganda in the region, with Sudan being a particular area of concern. IMI, a UAE media business, said in a statement to The National that the report was incorrect. The two sides are engaged in standard commercial discussions under an existing agreement that runs until May 2027, it said. After the clampdown on reporting in Gaza, Israeli restrictions enforced by military censor have been expanded as it fights a war on two fronts, in Iran and in Lebanon. In the U.S., President Trump makes contradictory statements on Truth Social, while Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has attacked a dishonest and anti-Trump press for questioning the war's progress. The result is a difficulty in reporting what is happening in the conflict zones in real time, as the warring parties and their respective militaries hold a near monopoly on information. Absent demonstrable facts, the public on all sides is left trying to make sense of a war that is killing thousands, damaging the world economy, and ratcheting up global instability. Blanket limitations on reporting can be used as a tool by governments to control the narrative and obstruct the flow of reliable information at a time when the public most needs independent journalism. Anthony Bellinger, General Secretary of the International Federation of Journalists, said in a statement, "The paradox is that the hostilities are taking place in an era of unprecedented information overload. Yet arguably it's the most difficult conflict with American participation to ascertain the truth of what is going on." The emergence of artificial intelligence is further budding reality as social media timelines are flooded with AI montages that are not always labeled as such and which are becoming ever harder to spot. In the United Arab Emirates, the Attorney General ordered the arrest of 35 people from various countries last weekend for sharing misleading conduct online, some real and some AI generated. Gulf Arab states have never exactly been a haven for free press, but media organizations, including Reporters Without Borders, say the region's governments have taken advantage of the current situation to impose more restrictions. While there is some legitimacy in exercising control, particularly to avoid giving away the position of defenses as well as to suppress AI-generated misinformation, the current measures come against a backdrop of tightening restrictions more broadly. In 2007, the UAE ranked 65th of 180 countries in the annual Press Freedom Index, published by Reporters Without Borders, RSF. It placed at least 164 in 2025 when the RSF cited the government's habit of tracking down and prosecuting dissenting voices. The war just came to kill the last hope of freedom of expression in the region, said Sarah Kunda, Paris-based regional director for the Middle East and North Africa with the Committee to Protect Journalism, which is running a daily tally of violations to press freedom. This is the first time in our modern history where we see a war with this number of countries involved and directly attacked. I don't think any government or authority in the Middle East was prepared for such an event, she said. And the first response to what's happening was to control the media until they know what is going to happen. Projecting an image of normalcy is about economic survival, giving the need to remain attractive for expatriates. In Dubai, restaurants, malls, and hotels have all remained open, and outside the main tourist areas are surprisingly busy. Yet more than 500 people have been arrested in Qatar alone for filming and circulating unauthorized video clips, according to the Interior Ministry. Another 26 have been arrested in Bahrain, including for expressing support for the attacks, and a handful in Kuwait. Sharing rumors, false information, or any content that contradicts official announcements or that may cause public panic or threaten public safety, order, or health is prohibited. The Dubai police posted on X in English. Anyone violating the order could face criminal penalties, including imprisonment and fines. The authorities can do little to stop the reality of plumes of smoke rising from attacks on fuel tanks at Dubai and Kuwait airports, or obvious damage to buildings in the areas of Bahrain. The U.S. Embassy in Kuwait took hits, as did the pension fund building in the center of Kuwait City, next to the Four Seasons Hotel, a popular choice for many visiting U.S. executives and bankers. That's not comparable to what people witnessed in Kuwait during the 1990-91 Iraqi occupation and First Gulf War. Yet even during the U.S.-led invasion of Iraq during the Second Gulf War of 2003, when Kuwait was the target of Iraqi missiles, journalists and civilians were free to visit impacted sites. Not so today. Iran is described by RSF as one of the world's most oppressive countries in terms of press freedom. Prior to this war, visiting foreign journalists who were given selective visas were required to work with Iranian government-approved media agencies that provide an official translator, fixers, and film crews, and which could chaperone reporters. Journalists are often targeted by the state for their reporting, or in the case of foreign and dual nationals, to be used as leverage in disputes with other countries. Iranian journalists working for local media can be arrested when they report on stories that become politically sensitive or draw significant domestic or international condemnation. At least a dozen journalists remain behind bars in Iran, according to data from the CPJ, which notes that the near total internet blackout has effectively cut them off from the outside world. In Israel, war-specific guidelines issued by the military censor this month forbid all reporting on missile impacts in or around security sites, but do permit filming at civilian impact sites. Broad restrictions apply on the broadcasting of missile interceptors, which Israel relies on for defense. The Israel military also limits information on the numbers of missiles and drones fired from Iran. The Israeli Defense Forces operate an expansive spokesperson unit that led to the information front since then. Top decision makers, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz, rarely engage with Israeli media, leaving little room for questions on the country's largest and most expensive military conflict in history. Netanyahu's cabinet has been attempting to curb media freedom since it came to power in late 2022. His government recently tried to shut down Army Radio, a popular public news station, and was temporarily stopped by the Supreme Court. It's all a far cry from the U.S. of the 1960s, when military transportation was made readily available for the press. The upshot was a degree of proximity to the battlefield that, combined with the arrival of the television age, brought uncensored reports into the living rooms of the world. Media access was pared back in the subsequent conflicts. In the first Gulf War, CNN made its name broadcasting from a Baghdad hotel rather than with the Army. During the second, the U.S. and other nations embedded reporters with military units on the ground, giving a degree of controlled access. Today's war on Iran is primarily being waged from the air by U.S. and Israeli forces, leaving little room for independent reporting outside military confines. The Trump administration is in any case in the process of shaking up the media favoring right-wing influencers and podcasters who share the president's worldview over legacy news outlets. A federal judge on Friday blocked the Trump administration's decision to curtail the activities of reporters at the Pentagon. Hegseth, the former Fox News host, has meanwhile limited access to his briefings on the Iran war. Stars and Stripes, the U.S. military newspaper, was not approved to attend a briefing last week, its Pentagon reporter said. The U.S. is at the same time slipping down the rankings of press freedom, placing 57th of 180 last year, according to RSF. In 2002, the first year of the index, it was 17th of the 139 countries, then ranked 5 slots ahead of the UK. Last year, it was 37 places behind. After a century of expanding rights, the U.S. is experiencing its first significant and prolonged decline in press freedom in modern history, RSF said. Trump's presidency is greatly exacerbating the situation. Last week, U.S. Federal Communications Commission Chairman Brendan Carr warned broadcasters to correct course on news coverage of the Iran war or risk losing their licenses. On Truth Social, Trump said he was thrilled at Carr's move.
Thank you, Larry. Aid vessel arrives in Cuba as economic crisis deepens. A ship bringing humanitarian aid to Cuba arrived in Havana on Tuesday loaded with solar panels, bicycles, food, and medicine as the island's economic and energy crisis deepened. Some 30 people were aboard the first of 3 ships expected to arrive in Cuba as it grapples with severe blackouts, a crumbling power grid, and U.S. energy blockade. This type of economic warfare shouldn't exist. Excuse me. This attitude of a private state that doesn't respect international law Activist Thiago Avila told reporters as he disembarked from the ship christened Granma 2.0 in homage to the ship that ferried revolutionary leader Fidel Castro to the island in 1956. These ships are a drop in the ocean of need. At the same time, it's a gesture of solidarity. The ship departed Puerto Progreso in Merida, Mexico, last week, and 2 others are heading to Cuba. The help is important to us so that it can be seen that the revolution is not alone, Antonia Santamaria, a 72-year-old retiree, said as she watched the boat slowly approach the dock. The flotilla is part of a caravan called Our America Convoy to Cuba, with more than 650 participants from 33 countries who arrived on the island last weekend with tons of aid and were received by President Miguel Diaz-Canel. Visitors included British parliamentarian Jeremy Corbyn, Colombian Senator Clara Lopez, Spanish politician Pablo Iglesias, and U.S. labor leader Chris Smalls. The popular Irish hip-hop trio Kneecap also participated. The energy embargo imposed by President Trump in late January to bring pressure for a change to the island's political model has compounded 5 years of profound economic crisis stemming from the paralysis caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and previous U.S. sanctions against the Caribbean nation. Cuba is suffering from transportation shortages, reduced working hours, flight cancellations, and above all, blackouts, including 2 island-wide blackouts in recent days. Trump and the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, whose parents emigrated from Cuba in the 1950s, have said they are prepared to take the island. Authorities from both countries acknowledge that they are holding talks, although they have not disclosed details. Cuba's Deputy Minister of Energy and Mines, Aurelio Abad Vigo, last week said the country has gone 3 months without receiving supplies of diesel, fuel oil, gasoline, jet fuel, and liquefied petroleum gas, all of which are vital for the economy and electricity generation. Cuba produces barely 40% of the fuel it needs. Meanwhile, a Hong Kong-flagged vessel that was reportedly carrying 200,000 barrels of diesel from Russia to Cuba has instead docked in Venezuela, according to Marine Traffic, a project that tracks the movement of vessels around the globe using publicly available data. Leaders from several organizations and several countries have warned that Cuba could be on the verge of a humanitarian crisis. Countries including Mexico, China, Brazil, and Italy, and non-governmental groups from the United States are among those that have sent aid. Larry?
Thank you, Linda. From Ukraine, a major Russian drone and missile attack on civilian areas of Ukraine killed 6 people and injured at least 46, officials said Tuesday, while Moscow's army stepped up efforts to break through Ukrainian frontline defenses in what could be the start of a spring ground offensive. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Wednesday, March 25th, 2026. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Linda Ranella
and Larry Beenan. Thank you for listening, and please continue to stay safe.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio Reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. Radio Reading mails out a large print program schedule to our listeners every other month. If you have not received a Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service large print program schedule in the mail, please call us at 716-821-5555. We will make sure that you receive one every other month. A Braille version of the schedule is also available upon request. Our number again is 716-821-5555. Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the New York Times Style section. Following that at noon is today's USA Today. Stay with us. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability